Iraqis have voted in the first parliamentary poll since US troops left 3 years ago. Voting took place in the shadow of renewed violence. It's killed more than 100 people in the last week alone. Can this election restore the stability and peace so many Iraqis seek? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. There was heavy security across Iraq on Wednesday as voters went to the polls to decide their future. It's the first parliamentary poll since US forces withdrew in 2011. The run-up to the election had been overshadowed by sectarian tension and violence. And while the candidates, many of them, voted safely in the heavily fortified green zone, some Iraqis braved the threat of attacks to cast their ballot. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is seeking a third term in office and says he's confident he will win. But his critics insist his Shia-dominated government has been biased towards other ethnic and religious groups. 22 million Iraqis were eligible to vote, with 276 political groups and 9,000 candidates contesting the 328 seats in the Council of Representatives. Iraqi politics is dominated by shifting alliances and blocs that are made up of different political parties. These blocs are sometimes formed along ethnic or religious grounds. They're composed of political parties in alliance, which are awarded seats from the national vote on the basis of proportional representation. The bloc which can display the most number of seats is then given the first opportunity to form a government. If it doesn't do it within 30 days, then the bloc with the second highest number of seats will have a chance. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is part of the Shia-led State of Law bloc, which had 2 less seats in the cross-sectarian Al-Iraqi alliance in 2010, but succeeded in forming a government while Al-Iraqi could not. Well, to help us discuss this further, let's introduce our panel. al-Maliki joins us from Erbil. He's a member of the Iraqi parliament and one of the candidates for the Wataniya alliance. In Washington, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, who served as a deputy director of operations for coalition forces in Iraq. And in London, Rassan al-Attiyah, the director for the Iraqi Institute for Democracy and Development. Welcome to you all. Let's begin in Erbil with al-Maliki. Initial reaction is that the election process went as well as could be hoped for, given the deeply dangerous security situation. Your view?
Well, Iraqi people realize that the elections are very important, and that's a general feeling. So there's a current of willing to participate actively in the elections. But the situation, the security, and the control of the military forces and the action of military forces to one side prevented thousands, hundreds of thousands of people from real participation. And you know, Abu Ghraib and Baghdad in general is not secure, not stable. There is floats in Abu Ghraib, and the floats kicked out thousands of people from their houses. And they want to participate, so most of them had emigrated. Secondly, the arrest, the night arrest, and the militias in the form of uniform official military are going around in Baghdad and picking up people haphazardly. And thirdly, the bombings, the car bombings, and the campaigning of elections. Usually we heard a lot of bombings near the campaigning where a collection of high number of people. So this is the atmosphere of the election in general. In spite of that, some 60% of people participated, realizing the importance. But the percent of participation, this is very vital to be known. The unstable area were deprived, I mean, high percent of people were deprived of giving their votes.
Let's go to Rassan al-Attiyah for his initial reaction to the election process.
Looking at the election, you have to differentiate between different areas in Iraq. As far as the Kurdish area, the election went smoothly and the participation exceeded the 60%, 65. And there's a hot competition. Though in the Kurdish area, those who, Iraqi refugees who went to Kurdistan, most of them were not able to vote because of certain irregularity and technical faults. But still, it's okay. Similarly, in the south, the Shia area, they were competing there, and there's not really much a problem. The real problem is in the Arab Sunni areas in Baghdad and Nainawa and Salah ad-Din Anbar. Here, the tactical position of the government, particularly the Prime Minister, the less the Sunni participate, the better. For him, he knows he lost their confidence, but he was banking on a number of Sunnis who are aligned with him, and they stand under different names, under different list names. He was hoping that they will have a better chance when the other will not be able to participate. Thus, in Anbar, the participation is less than 40%. Similarly, around Baghdad, the area, Abu Ghraib and others, and it will not exceed 30%. That will be more than expected. However, the other factor which helped the election to be acceptable, the Arab Sunni realized if they don't go, that will be a calamity for them, and they will be even further marginalized. Then the religious head of them, the tribal leader or Sunni tribal, encouraged them to go and vote. That was a change of mind. Those extremists, in particular the Iraq Islamic State, Daesh, they apparently heeded the demand of the populace, and their action to prevent the election was limited, and thus the more participation took place. So in general, the election, I would say, if we give it from 10 to 0, I think it could achieve 6.
Mark Emmett, what number would you give it from 10 to 0?
Probably closer to 8. I agree with the earlier comments that there may have been some attempts to specifically exclude some portion of the population. That is wrong. There may have been some irregularities with persons that were moving to the north. That's wrong. But I think we've got to put it in context. This was an organic, self-run election by the people of Iraq, and to have an overall number of 60% in what is appearing to be a relatively free and fair election should be considered an achievement for the people of Iraq and for the leadership of Iraq.
Well, let's go to Al-Amaki. Already this point has been brought up about the exceedingly low vote in Anbar province. But the point that has been made by Rasan al-Attiyah is that numbers did go to the polls in parts of the province despite intimidation from extremist groups within that particular area. So there was a degree of Sunni participation within the process which would appear to be crucial to the overall integrity of the vote. Would you agree?
Well, look, the most important factor of challenging the election is Anbar, because it is the hottest area 10 years ago. So we worked hardly to persuade Anbar people to participate in 2005, and they participated, and more in 2010 election. Now they want to participate, but they are prevented. The prevention, well, is coming from the government, as my colleague said, because the less the Sunni participate, the better the chances for the government to sustain. But here we are. Whether we give mark 6 or 8 to the elections, that is not important. The important issue is the results, what the election will reflect on political change in the governmental and political regime in Iraq. Because in 2010, okay, there was pressures and there was international pressures, and the Iraqi didn't get the chance. But the results is what we ended in 2014 of this failing government. Now, if we also having pressure from outside and interference from neighboring countries and international society, and they will put somebody in power, okay, that will be reflected to more and more chaos in Iraq. So it is not the election and the participation and the percent of participation. It's what will result after after the elections, and if they let the people to express their concerns. I mean, now in Santiago, and the chances for Maliki to form a government is very low because the alliances is against him. So according to the supervening rules now, election rules, so we can, I mean, the other blocs can forming alliances and challenging al-Maliki and push him to the opposition even. Here we are. This is the important issue.
I think that you've hit the critical issue there. Let's go to Mark Kimmer to that particular point, is that we've talked very briefly about the turnout, about the running of the system itself, but now it's a question of forming a government after the results. This is something that took 10 months in the last national election. How critical is this government-making process which we're about to embark on?
Well, from a national security point of view, it's critical, but not entirely necessary that it is done too early. The Prime Minister still is a caretaker. He still has national security considerations that he will be able to uphold. But I do agree with both the election and the formation of the government being means to the end. The end is, what does this election take Iraq towards? Greater reconciliation among the parties, greater reconciliation among the sects, greater assimilation into an Iraq sense of one nationality, or does it lead to more division? Does it lead to more separation? Does it lead to more conflict? And hopefully the government process, the government formation process, will be an opportunity for all of the parties and all of the sects to resolve that the next government should demonstrate a more inclusive nature than we're currently seeing inside of Iraq.
Well, Rasid al-Attiyah, as was mentioned, 2010, Iraq was still under occupation. This is a first election where the US is not present. Are there less factors at play here in terms of outside interferences that we heard al-Maliki refer to, in terms of forming the government, the process that will begin within the next weeks and months?
Well, the absence of the American presence in Iraq plays, ironically, for a change in Iraq. I will explain that. In 2010, al-Iraqi list got 91 seats and state of the law 89. But the Shia, with the backing of Tehran, they will never accept and could not accept a Shia or a prime minister not coming from their own household. So they opposed al-Iraqi list, and they regrouped themselves into a new bloc called the National Bloc, and then they got 140 seats, and then they nominated al-Maliki. Now, and one of the reasons when they herd all the Shia into one bloc was that the American will leave Iraq and we will have to make the process easy. Similarly, Washington, because they want to leave Iraq intact with less trouble, they also agreed with the Iranian that let us have some Shia from the Islamic Shia to take over. So ironically, Washington and Tehran were in agreement to have someone other than the head Allawi to be prime minister. Now, with the American outside Iraq, with the Maliki failure to deliver during the last 4 years, by simply comparing the situation in 2010 by 2014, it was Iraq began to regain its health and stability. Now it is in a shamble. So now the question, what will be the position of the Shia Islamists? Change in Iraq is in the hand of the Shia. The Kurd or the Sunni could obstruct, could make life difficult, but they cannot make the change. The change in the Shia now will be decided according to the following terms. Is it to their interest to have al-Maliki in power again? In that case, the same will continue for another 4 years, and then Maliki lost confidence of the Sunnis, lost confidence of the Kurd, as well as a large segment of the Shia. The determining factor in this is, will al-Maliki get 120 seats? If he gets 120, it will be difficult to deny him the chance of forming government. It will be a way of convincing the Iranian and other Shia, at least I have the largest bloc. But if he will get 70 votes, 70, 75, he will be in a weaker position. And now, as we had heard yesterday from head of the ISKI about the Islamic Council, that they want to reorganize the Shia alliance, which means that actually, this is what I understood from inside sources, that for the last 3 premiers were held by the Al-Da'wa party. So it is time to have somebody else. As well as Al-Hakim group and Al-Sadr group are in tacit agreement, and maybe it will be public soon, that the prime minister should be someone other than al-Maliki.
Well, let's just pause at this particular point, if I may, Rassan. Apologies for interrupting, but let's just pause and take a look at the present prime minister. Nouri al-Maliki is regarded by many as a polarizing figure in Iraq, but he says he's certain of another victory. He first came to power in 2006, and his intent, he says, on staying in office for a 3rd term. He went into exile in 1979 when his Al-Dawah party challenged Saddam Hussein for the leadership, but he would return 25 years later in 2003. And as Iraq descended in sectarian chaos, Maliki was appointed prime minister as a compromise candidate among Sunni, Shia and Kurdish parties. And though results are not expected until later in May, he's expected to play, as we've heard, a big role in creating a coalition after the election. Now, Mark Kimmett, this whole issue of a sectarian process within Iraqi politics, yet it is becoming apparent, as we've heard Rassan refer to there, that al-Maliki's opposition comes also from within Shia elements within Iraq and indeed outside Iraq. It is not just a question of non-Shia actually opposing him. His opposition comes from within his own support base as well, it would appear.
Look, I think we've got to understand that you're seeing the same low poll numbers for Prime Minister Maliki that you're seeing for President Obama. After 8 years in power, it is typical that the people are looking for a change. Obama is seeing himself significant opposition from with his own Democratic Party. But I don't think that that should take away either from the achievements of President Obama nor the achievements of Prime Minister Maliki. Both are seen as very polarizing figures. That is why we have elections. That's why we don't elect prime ministers and presidents for life. And that's why in America we've restricted the term of the president to only 2 terms. It could well be that if we still had the ability to run for a 3rd term, President Obama may in fact envision a 3rd term, and he would get significant opposition from inside his own party, from people such as Hillary Clinton. So in many ways, I see that as a natural consequence of the parliamentary and the democratic process, but it shouldn't take away from the achievements of Prime Minister Maliki. It just may be that the country is ready for a change.
Well, Al-Maliki, your view on that, is this an improvement in the formation of democracy, that it is not clearly a purely sectarian division in terms of the coalition making that is now going to be happening, or indeed in support for Al-Maliki himself?
Well, I look to the scene from another view. The Shia sector now is not united, as a union, because the Sadrist and the ISKI are speaking in one way and the state of law in another way. So the opposition to al-Maliki is coming from inside. In 2010, Iran interfered by force and the people were united. Now, we understood that Iran is not supporting al-Maliki because the Marji'iyya is not supporting al-Maliki at all. There is some religious instructions to Shia not to vote for al-Maliki. Whatever the results of the seats, because Iraqi people, they know there's some pressure, some changes, some chaos. So Marji'iyya inside, which is really the top leadership for Shia, is not supporting al-Maliki whatsoever. This is in the Shia sector. In the Sunni sector, we have the Muttahidun, who represent the Sunni, and we have the Wataniyya, which is also a substantial percent of Sunnis supporting Ayad Allawi. Both are against. The Kurd is against. So the atmosphere is really very eligible that there might be some sort of unions kicking out al-Maliki. Even because Iran is not that interfering and the United States is far away, although they are present really and we respect their presence. But the interest of United States and Iran and foreign countries will not be so stable if al-Maliki took over, and all the opposition will coalesce to form a stronger position. And that's the tension which is now present in Baghdad, at least.
Well, Rassan al-Attiyah, this is a very important point. Mark Kimmett brought it up originally as well. But what was al-Maliki was referring to there as well about the call from the Shia leadership based in the holy city of Najaf. The call there was actually, we need change. It was not a direct instruction. It was actually the expression that change is needed, the inference that al-Maliki is not going to provide the kind of change that Iraq needs. Do you read it like that? That what Iraq is looking for is improvement in electricity supplies, in sewerage, that even these issues overshadow the violence, the constant threat of violence?
I agree with my colleague Makki. There is a division within the Shia, but in 2010, the Iranian felt they should unite them because the Americans were there and they want them to get rid of them. Now the Americans are not there. Iraq is actually the back garden of the Iranian. The Iranian influence is dominant in Iraq, and far, far more than the layman would know about this. Now the question for the Iranian, what is their interest? Will they back Maliki because he is a tried person and force him? And they could do that. But that will turn Iraq into another Syria. Or they will be inclined to choose another Shia who is also allied to them, from Iski or Sadri or others. And then that person will play a role of building bridges with the Sunni and the Kurd, and then Iraq will be more stable as long as Iraq is actually now, for all intent and purposes, is under Iranian influence. So the balance tilt toward looking for another person. And now the question is not only this, the Sunni has to play their role. The fact that the Sunni are so fractious, so divided in a way which is not good for them and not good for the whole Iraq. There should be an initiative by the whole Sunnis to start after the election now and to try to gather their forces and unite. Without uniting, they lose and Iraq will lose. And I give you the example. Now al-Maliki count on some, as the Iraqi will call them, they are the Sunni of al-Maliki. These people are standing in election in Anbar, in Salah ad-Din and other areas. Al-Maliki is hoping to win at least 10 to 15 votes of the Sunnis who are indebted to him or financed by him. Among them is the Minister of Defense. And then he could try to convince the Iranian and other Shia that I have actually the support, not only Shia, but also the Sunni.
Well, if I may go very quickly, apologies for interrupting Rassan, but very quickly to Mark Kimmett, because we're running out of time here, that it does appear to be in self-interest, certainly in Iraq's interest, to form some kind of unity administration, some kind of unity government. We've heard from the whole panel about the divisions within Shia, the divisions within Sunni groups, and the importance of having a strong and united, powerful government leadership. Is that a possibility?
Well, it could be, but I would also mention the fact that there's a lot of division going on inside of Kurdistan right now in northern Iraq. Those parties, the PUK, the KDP, and Goran, aren't coming together as a bloc either. So we may in fact have the most virtuous of situations for a parliamentary democracy, that there are no single blocs that have a controlling interest, so that the hard work of forming a government will take place where everybody is represented and no particular bloc, no particular party, no particular sect has the overwhelming majority from the start. In many ways that could be dangerous because it could lead to more fracturing of the country. And I look at it positive, that it might cause the parties to do the compromise, the conciliation that is necessary to form either a national unity government or a caretaker government that goes on for some period of time to handle the national security challenges that they have, in order that what emerges from the end of the government formation process is a government that represents all Iraqis and is not beholden either to Tehran or to Washington, but is only beholden to the people of Iraq.
Well, at that point, thank you so much to my guests, al-Maliki, Mark Kimmett, and Rassan al-Attiyah. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. You can send us your thoughts on Facebook or tweet us at AJ Inside Story. From everyone here, I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.